Hi, everyone. It's Christine Gritmon. Thank you so much for joining us for today's social. Sorry we got started a couple minutes late, but we're here with Christy Lawrence, who founded an awesome program called Plan for Instagram. So she's, of course, an Instagram expert. So she's going to talk to us about story selling. But first, Christy, thanks so much for being here. Tell us a little bit about Plan, and then we'll move into story selling.
So I wanted to create something to help people really understand Instagram marketing. Well, I actually wanted to help people understand marketing as general, but tech is so expensive that I had to start with Instagram. What I found over and over that Instagram is all about how the gallery looks and what your profile and your branding looks rather than the individual post itself. And I found that I was repeating myself quite a lot. So I thought, all right, well, I'll build an app and I'll teach people how to do it en masse.
And so what does the app do exactly?
So with Plan, it's a productivity management tool with analytics. So what you can do is import your videos and images into a gallery and then drag and drop and visually design and organize what your branding and feed looks like before you post. You have full control. There's filtering, you can draft all your captions, there's a hashtag management system, and then I think my favorite feature at the moment is that you can log in as somebody else and see all of their analytics as well.
Oh, wow.
Yes, you can see their best times to post and their best hashtags and their best color schemes.
Wow.
And then on Monday, we actually launch, sneak peek, the ability to schedule stories.
Oh, wow. So how does that work? Because I know that one of the things that drives me crazy with Instagram is that it's hard to properly schedule because it can't really auto post for you because the API is closed. So what does Plan do when it butts up against that? Like, how close does it get?
Yeah, so what you can do is you can draft everything and have it ready. And then at the time, we send you the friendliest reminder that says, now it's time to post. Get yourself that now it's time to go. And we'll just push the image and your caption over, and you just have to paste and push post. So that's correct. We don't want to. The last thing I want to do is not sleep at night knowing that I'm...
Oh, it froze up a little. You there? Okay.
Yeah, I'm still here. Sorry.
All good. All right. So now let's talk about story selling. Let's talk about that and how Instagram can really be used for that. Because Instagram, it's all visual, so it's really telling a very visual story. So what are some really effective ways that you've seen that people can use that?
So I think one of the biggest mistakes that I see brands and people making online is that we all know there's a person behind the feed and we all know there's a real person that's doing everything. So we kind of forget that people are buying from people. Yeah. And to be able to connect and make that connection, you need to be able to tell a story of why your brand exists or why your brand does what it does and what it stands for. Because if you stand for everything, you're not going to be able to talk to anyone. So I think the best thing to do is sit down and work out what your story actually is and why the brand exists and your vision and your mission. And then from there, you can actually break it down further. And this is why I love the idea of story selling or storytelling for some people, is you can break it down into different themes. And the ones that you'll probably be most aware of is behind the scenes, the community feel, the education, and the inspiration. So those are the four kind of main categories. And from there, you can even branch further into the different themes. So if you have those four different themes and you use them to gradually tell a story and continue to tell your why and why you're doing what you do, and then drop in a call to action, you'll be able to story sell and make a connection with people, which then in turn also increases your engagement.
Now let's talk a little bit more about those four elements of the stories that you can tell: the behind the scenes, community feel. What were the other two? Sorry.
Sorry, I just lost you a little bit. Sorry.
It's okay. There was behind the scenes, there was community feel, and then there were a couple others.
There was inspiration, because people are online to be inspired.
Yeah.
And if you're selling them a lifestyle, then they want to be inspired by the lifestyle that you're selling. And then the fourth one is always about education, especially if you're a service-based business, or if you're trying to teach somebody something, or if you're teaching somebody something and then they're in the market to purchase, they'll remember you because you taught them something.
Yes. So let's talk a little bit about what each of those four can look like.
Sure. So behind the scenes is about you as a human. So for example, if you're an artist, there's a lot of the overhead shots. It doesn't have to be you. It could be your hands. It could be preferably, if you're not a food blogger, then it's not about your food. It's not about what you're having for breakfast, unless it's relevant to, if you're blogging, you've got a notepad or something. Like, just make it super relevant to what you're actually doing. I think that's really important. And then if you're behind the scenes, you don't have to have somebody else taking these. You can set up a tripod. They're pretty cheap on eBay these days.
Yeah.
And then all the overhead stuff, like I do my own. And then what's the next one? What's next? The community feel. For me, this actually, I break this down into vulnerability, because if you're vulnerable and you show the warts and all, then there's more people who realize that there's actually a human behind your brand. So you could talk about how hard something is, or ask for help with something, and get a really cool community vibe happening. Because if you show that you're perfection and just, so I feel that for me personally, I've broken it down into vulnerability.
Okay. We lost you a little bit after, right after, if you just show perfection. So if you can.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So if you're showing perfection and that you're always amazing and doing amazing things without showing that you're a real person, then people just can't relate to that. And that's what I found for me personally. So I usually push the community vibe / vulnerability is a great theme to tell in your story.
Absolutely. And then we come to inspiration.
Yeah, so inspiration. So let's be honest, Instagram is stunning. And if you're not producing great, it's such a good place to be. But I'm inspired, and I think that's why I ended up in this space as well, is that you're selling a lifestyle and you want to inspire people to live that lifestyle. So if you're selling boho clothing, you're not showing a girl sitting at her office desk. It just doesn't make sense to do that. So it's about that inspiring to sell the lifestyle. And I think there's a lot of actually, the people that have impressed me the most with the lifestyle is actually jewelry brands. There's some beautiful jewelry brands that, for example, the boho one, their shots are at the beach. They're wearing whimsical clothes. If they're selling high-end diamonds, then they're wearing ball gowns and things. So I think the jewelry industry have really nailed how to inspire people. And then I think one of the key tips for that is that your brand has to match your pricing. So if you have huge pricing and your images are of your cat, it's not going to work.
Unless it's a really high-end, fancy breed cat with a diamond tag.
Yeah.
But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And similarly, if you're budget pricing, you don't want to show it all on yachts and everything necessarily. It has to be in an environment that the people buying your product either can achieve or can fall just shy of.
Exactly.
Yeah. Great. And then education. Now let's talk about how brands can educate, because I know that if you're someone like me who is a consultant, the education part is obvious. I should give, social media tips. But if you're a brand, for example, like jewelry or like something like that you just mentioned, how can consumer brands educate?
Okay, so let's we can stay on the jewelry topic. I'm happy to talk about jewelry all day. And so say, for example, you're going to custom make a necklace. I have no idea what that takes and how much time that takes, or what the process is that's involved in that. And then because of that, I have no idea of the skill level required. And so I'm kind of flying on my own. So if a jewelry person, I have a fabulous girlfriend that makes jewelry, and she puts a GoPro camera on her head.
Oh, wow.
While she films. So she's got her behind the scenes sorted for that. But he actually talks you through what she's doing and how hot the temperature gets and how she's cutting and why she's doing things. So the difference between that and understanding how detailed she gets into that process versus someone who just posts a picture, I would go for her.
And that's a really good point about how you can sort of combine some of these objectives, because that's education, but it's also kind of behind the scenes.
So sorry, I lost you. I think I lost you that time.
I was saying that's a good way of showing how you can combine some of these objectives. So that's education, but it's also behind the scenes.
Exactly. So it's that well-rounded story that you get.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. That's a very good way of doing things. And now you mentioned that your app helps with Instagram stories. And so that would be something you do on an Instagram story. In terms of the images themselves, how do you tell a story with kind of the flat images? I mean, is it all about the captions and how do hashtags play into the story?
Well, it's a mixture of things, because you've got to understand that Instagram is one piece of your lead generation channel of all channels.
Yeah.
So you have to work out what unique content that you're going to put on Instagram to drive all of the traffic versus every other channel. But once you have that story in your images, then of course you can cross post, but you need to work out what's unique for each platform.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really good place to start. So in terms of what do I put in the stories, this is your captions, this is my hashtag, like that's an hour in itself. And I probably couldn't do that question justice, because it's so dependent. And you're in social media, so you'll know it's so dependent on the person and their outcome. There's some people that are on Instagram just to raise awareness, and then there are other people that are influencers or want to actually make sales. So it's very different depending on your purpose.
Absolutely. Now, what do you think about sharing of Instagram images to Facebook, for example? You know, that's a strategy a lot of people kind of use to save a little time, but it's not always the best strategy. Like, how do you feel about it, and when should it be used and when should it not be used?
Sorry, you cut out a little bit. So I think you asked me about cross-posting, like using your Instagram images over on Facebook as well. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So what you have to, for me, what I've tried to teach people when I'm doing my own, I do a little bit of consulting on the side just to try and help a little bit more, but people don't like to leave the platform, right? Mm-hmm. So the platform run, if they're scrolling on Instagram and you're saying, hey, new blog post, click here, I'm going to be honest, it's probably not going to work, right? So if you can use stories to tell us, to say, hey, I've got a new blog post on how to lift your engagement rate. And so what you can do is have the top 3 points and then point the last story to your feed and say, find more information here. And then they have a good size blurb. And then if they're still ready, then they can click on your link in your bio. So I'd be looking at how you can keep people engaged on the platform they prefer to be on.
Good
so
call.
For me, I never, that's a bad word. I very, very rarely would post something on Instagram and then also put it on Facebook. And if I do, it'd probably be a month later.
Okay, so but you have to use Facebook also on occasion, I'd imagine. So how do the stories you tell differ on different platforms versus Instagram?
So I have a very specific content strategy. I'm a one-woman band and I have a little bit of help going on, so I have to be very organized. So a background in marketing also helps.
Oh, frozen. We lost you again, Christy. Sorry.
Have you got me?
Okay, now you're back.
We're back. Oh, hooray.
All right.
I have a very specific content strategy for my own business. And so for Instagram, my purpose is creating community and providing helpful tips about engaging a community. That's really what I sit for there. On Facebook, I'm the sharing of trend-setting information. So you can go to my page and it's always up to date with the most recent news. And I'm turning out content from my blog, which it's easy to get people to click over to a link because they're on their computer, mostly on Facebook. But my captions will always be a rough outline of what the blog post is, so they're not having to leave. So that's what I like to do there. And then I have my blog channel as well.
Great. Okay, so it sounds like what you're saying is that Facebook, you sort of bring them in with the content sort of more verbally, whereas Instagram, you bring them in with the visual content.
Yeah, and a bit more personality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. So what kind of industries do you think are especially prime for Instagram versus not so much?
Oh, I think if used correctly. I mean, there's 800 million people on Instagram. It is crazy. And that's only 20% of that is in America. Right? So they're everywhere. So depending on where your business is and what it does, you can definitely make leads. So last night I was talking to someone in New Zealand who has a local curtain making business.
Oh, it froze again.
Community. He was in London. Sorry, did I cut out? Yeah.
Okay,
so he was a curtain making business in New Zealand, but he was using global hashtags. And I'm like, what's your purpose? If you're wanting to get social proof and grow your audience by number, then sure. But if you want to make actual sales and get leads, that's not the way to go. So again, you just have to be very specific about what your purpose is online.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Well, great. Does anyone who's watching have any questions for Christy about how they can use Instagram more effectively to tell their story?
Hit me.
In the meantime, if you have any favorite examples to share or anything like that of some stories you've seen do it really well.
Wow, there are so many that come to mind. I'm actually, what I was talking about on Instagram yesterday might interest people, is that the Explore tab. There's a lot of people that underutilize the Explore tab. There's so many great people to find in there. And people are really surprised to learn that they're not big influencers in there. They're actually micro influencers. I've just got a little friend coming to say hello.
Hello, Papa.
Hi, Henry. He's very cute. And so what I found by searching through my Explore tab is that there's people that are between 4,000 and 5,000 followers that have beautiful feeds. And I found interacting with them some of the best people that I've met to collaborate with.
Oh, so that's
and I think, yeah, I think at the moment when something's not done well, it means that you can really jump in there. So that's probably my favorite thing at the moment.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on. I don't think we have any questions right now, but thank you so much for being on. Go check out Plan. It has 2 N's, right? Plan with 2 N's.
It does. So the website is planthat.com. And there's a lot of people that will come to me and say, look, I really want to use your app, but I don't quite understand how to use social media. So what I've tried to do is I've created a free Instagram, a free masterclass. It's only 10 minutes long, and it's each video is a minute each. And it's a real jam-packed minute that you can learn as much as you can to be able to get yourself sorted out. So, I mean, it's for probably beginner to intermediate level, and it gives you a great refresh into your finding your purpose and how to spot those hashtags you should be using.
That's fantastic. Speaking of finding your purpose, we do have a question now. Barbara wants to know, what would you recommend for a life coach? I mean, I imagine that would fall largely into the inspire and educate.
It would, but it would also be about why she is a life coach herself, and who she's trying to attract, and the people that she works with, and then the results that they get.
Nice.
So I imagine it would be clarity and less overwhelm. So the images would be no clutter. It would be a very calming, that's what I'm imagining, a very calming vibe.
The feeling.
I don't know, unless it's about the feeling that you feel.
Well, that's great. And I actually have a friend who's a life coach whose Instagram I love, and she uses it to pose the type of questions that you want help with, not necessarily help with, but the type of questions that like a good coach would ask you to ponder, to kind of get the answers for yourself. And it just can be pretty brilliant because it provides that bit of education. It provides, what you want a life coach to provide, which is not to give you the answers, but to provide you with the right questions to ask yourself to find the answers.
And to help come up with structure around posting, she could definitely schedule something like a question every week that's like, how do you feel when this happens, and how could you change that? It's just, I mean, I could sit and brainstorm with you all day, but you could definitely, definitely, just like people searching for a virtual assistant, people are searching for life coaches.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, great. Well, thank you so much, Christy, for being on. I'm so glad you were able to make it this week. I found Christy the same way I found last week's guest. We found the Facebook group together, Badass Marketers and Founders, and it's great. It's lots of quality people in there.
I have to tell you, I've been in San Francisco now for 2 weeks, and I've been to 2 BAMF events, and they have been so great. Yeah, so if you haven't been in there already, and you're a marketer, I would suggest getting in there.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you so much, and I look forward
to see you.
Thanks.
Bye.